It's nice when somebody's empowered and they feel like they're in control. Yeah, so this open season's different, Anne. And why is it so different?
Well, I think what grabs your attention is the fact that the average premium increase across all plans offered by FEHB was 13.5%.
CD Financial, where health meets wealth. Today we have a very special guest with us, Anne Vanderslice Wartz. She has spent well over 2 decades working and training and helping federal employees, and she is a resident authority on the topic that we're very keenly interested in today, open season. Anne, welcome. It's fantastic to see you.
Thanks. And I love this topic because it really is one of the things that federal employees actually have some control over with their benefits.
It's nice when somebody's empowered and they feel like they're in control. Yeah, so this open season's different, Anne. And why is it so different?
Well, I think what grabs your attention is the fact that the average premium increase across all plans offered by FEHB was 13.5%.
That sounds relatively stiff.
Yes, when we think about the inflation on other things that we've experienced, it's certainly more than things even like food or housing.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned to me that what was it in 2022? Was it 7.7? In 23,
Right.
8.7, but now, boom. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
those increases compound just like we like the returns on our investments to do, except it's in reverse this time because they really accumulate. We're taking that 13.5% on a higher number.
So what this open season, what can federal employees do or federal retirees? What do they have that empowers them?
Well, we know that only about 5% of federal employees and retirees actually make the choice to change plans during open season, even though they have the right to do it every single year. And so this might be the attention grabber that some of those people who haven't looked before causes them to actually look. So the first thing to think about is that as a federal employee, as a participant in the plan, this is one of those unusual times in life where they actually have the advantage because they know what their health is. They know what they've been diagnosed with. If they're covering family members, they understand what they've been diagnosed with, and they can pair their insurance coverage to their needs. The insurance company cannot ask them what they've been diagnosed with.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Especially when you're unsure of things. I know when I teach retirement training at the federal agency level, it's a very hotly discussed topic when we come to FEHB, Federal Employee Health Benefit. And I think it's because of so many variables and there's so many stories that are told. And I don't think they're told in a mean way or there's any bad motive there. It's just that there's so much confusion surrounding how it works while employed, but especially when they go into retirement. So, Anne, why do why do so few, do you think, federal employees and retirees make any election changes? You said 5% on average. Why is that number so low during open season, do you think?
Well, if you just start with the outline of coverage, that's where the insurance company gets to explain how their benefits will be covered. It's roughly 170 pages. And so if I'm feeling a little confused or overwhelmed, do I need to read all 170 pages to make sure I didn't miss
I don't
anything?
think so. You're right? Yeah, I don't think
And
so.
I'm probably more confused because it's not actually written in English, it's written in insuranceese, not language I use every day. And so often, if I even bother to open that outline of coverage, I end up being more confused or more overwhelmed.
Yes, there's just so much litigious things, especially federally, that have to be disclosed and revealed. And it sure would be nice if there was a concise, short one-page document that gave you instructions, somebody there to hold your hand, so to speak. Yeah.
Absolutely. For people who are looking for advice, that's the most common thing they ask for. Help me choose the best health plan. And I think the other reason is if I've been in a plan, maybe since I started working for the federal government, it's been okay. Like I don't really have any big complaints. It's all right. This year, it could be the cost that makes me say, wait a minute, what am I getting for the premium I'm spending?
Yeah, that's it. I think sometimes too, it's a little intimidating trying to sort things out. I know just yesterday evening, I was on a Zoom call, and this family that I help and I work with, they were just trying to change their TSP elections from traditional, and under my advice to put some into Roth to get that 5-year clock rolling, and we could not figure it out till they shared their computer with me. They were using MyPay, but apparently, I'll tell you this, being civilian army employees, they had to go to GRB platform to change their TSP contributions. So they had to operate on 2 different platforms just to get it accomplished. So I mean, you can understand just something it seemed like as simple as that. If there was a little confusion around that, it could be intimidating to try to sort out, am I gonna make a mistake if I change my health insurance and during open season, none of us really relish the idea of change that much. Most of us like to stay where we're at in the area in the region where we know things. So most people are like that. So it's no wonder they're a little reticent to go ahead and jump in and do anything different than the year prior.
Well, and you bring up a good point because one of the things to consider is if I change plans, what's the risk I'm taking on? I'm taking on a plan that has a lower premium. So, what's the risk there? And it's understanding, first of all, what's the maximum out of pocket limit? If heaven forbid you choose a new plan, you get diagnosed early in the year with a catastrophic condition that's going to be very expensive, you're probably going to hit that maximum out of pocket limit. Can you live with that? There's a cap on what you can spend out of pocket, and you want to know what that risk is because that's your maximum level of risk. If you had that terrible scenario where you got diagnosed with that condition during open season the following year, what are you going to do? You're going to change to another plan that more closely matches your healthcare needs. So you want to remember that your risk might not be as great as you're thinking it is when you make that change.
Yeah, you're right. You need to just bring it down a notch and let the fear go if you can. Just just let it go. The worst thing that can happen is, as you mentioned, you got 1 year with a plan that might not be as good as what you had, but at least you have an open door 12 months later. And as we get older, time it goes like that, doesn't it? Yeah.
It
So
does.
it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake for life, at least. So, Anne, what are some of the important things that a federal employee or retiree needs to remember when making decisions about their healthcare provider during open season?
Well, you again want to think about okay, what's my health? What are the providers that I use? Do I want to keep going to those providers? How's my health? What's the most important consideration to you? Is it cost, overall cost, coverage? What benefits do I get? Choice? Can I go to any doctor I want to? Or convenience? What's near me? So you want to take one of those four C's. Which one's the most important to you? And then do your comparison based on that. It'll make it just a little less confusing.
Yeah, I guess it would. And, I'm always thinking cost, but I'll tell you why I'm thinking cost because I'm not actually using my health insurance. And so I think if I was using my health insurance, it probably would be, well, at least I'd probably be thinking about coverage if I had an illness that I was treating even if it was something that was ongoing or something I had to deal with for the rest of my life, then something I don't like the word chronic, but something that would be on a long span there, right? Yeah, and so in that case, then I might be thinking about my coverage and how much they're going to pay for what I have.
Or can I go to the specialist that I want to go to for that condition?
Yeah, and I work with a lot of folks that are out of big metropolitan areas. And sometimes I think, is that what the 1C is, convenience, where you mention it? Yeah. So sometimes they're coming in from the desert into LA, and I say when I'm teaching in instruction, I say, how long does it take you to get to a reliable hospital if you had a really bad accident or you just had to get good treatment? A lot of times they'll say an hour and 45 minutes, depends on the traffic, maybe 2.5 hours. So in that case, maybe convenience is an issue. They've got a specialist that's got to practice 40 minutes away, and that might be a lifesaver when it comes to quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you said 13.5% of a price increase. Is that across the board with all carriers, or how does that work?
No, because there are so many different carriers, they didn't all increase their premiums by the same amount. So some of them were more, some of them were less, with that average coming out at 13.5%.
That's
We know that the majority of federal employees are with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the reason for that is historically, Blue Cross Blue Shield has been around. They are available everywhere in all 50 states, and they're a household name. So people feel comfortable with it. And when we look at their premium increases, they have 3 plans. One plan only increased by 7%. But if you were in basic self plus family, it increased by 19.3%. So all plans were not created
19.
equal.
Wow. That is a lot, isn't it? Now, and I used to say that, well, and you can correct me here. I typically say in instruction that the government picks up about two-thirds of the premium for your health insurance, and then you're on the hook for one third, whether working or in retirement. Is that a relatively accurate statement, or help me understand?
Well, of course, there's a complicated formula that
Of course.
determines the government's share. And so it's typically, on average, about 72% is what the government pays. The employee or retiree pays about 28%. However, there's a cap on what the federal employer's share, the government's share, can be. And so, as an example, it's about $1,570 is the most they can pay on any premium. And so, when we look at Blue Cross Blue Shield standard, that the total premium, when I take 72% of it, is more than that 1570. There's a difference of about $90. Guess who gets to pay the $90? Do you think it's the government? No, it's the
I guess not,
employee.
no. Yeah. Hey, I got another question because I look at leave and earning statements, LESs all over the country. I noticed that some premiums seem to increase very sharply and other times not so much. And I know I might be throwing you a curveball here, but I've always wondered why that is. I notice employees in Fresno, for instance, they pay way more than in Southern California, and their cost of living for most other things is lower. And I always scratch my head and go, "What is the deal with this?" I don't know if it's because they're consumed with the San Francisco Bay Area or what it is. I'm gonna give you another example too, Ann, before you answer.
Okay.
Um, Firefighters, Region 5, I think it's called. I can't remember now. It was New Mexico, though. And I was there teaching, and there were huge premiums. And I don't want to say who their healthcare provider was because I kept hearing the same name over and over again. Sounded like a church, the name. And I kept hearing it, and I was like, what is going on out here with these folks and their healthcare premiums? It was a little shocking, actually. And so please tell me, help me, Ann. I want to understand because you're the resident authority on open season and everything FEHB, Federal Employee Health Benefit. Talk it to us.
If you're in Blue Cross Blue Shield anywhere in the United States, you're paying the same premium.
Is that right?
Premiums are always the same. It's one of 6 national plans offered through the federal government. Then regionally, if I'm in New Mexico, I have different plans offered to me than I do in California. And within California, there are different regional plans between Northern California and Southern California. And so if I'm in Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm paying the same premium, but I have other choices depending on where I'm located. And so that can be why there's a variance in those premiums.
Is that right? Well, I'm gonna remember that. I'm not gonna try to promote any one plan. I do, and I love the NFL. I really do. That's my thing. But I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, even though I'm out here in Southern California. Any of you Steeler fans out there, and I know there's gobs of you. Yes, every year we're doing it. Okay, so anyway, we're talking NFL, and I always use this illustration. I ask them, hey, do any of you guys like the Chiefs and Mahomes and everything that they've been able to put together? And there's a little silence. I don't hear that many actually, but I respect that team. We lived in Philly for 10 years. So Reed was the coach then before he went down to Kansas City, and he took them to a Super Bowl, by the way. Now, I don't think you're a big NFL fan, judging by the way you're reacting, but I'm going to get to my story here. So I tell them, I said, whose name, who's the sponsor of Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City? Usually there's silence. Once in a while, there's another NFL fan out there. And I think it's only in the last few years that Arrowhead Stadium even had a sponsor. But do you know who it is, Ann?
I believe it's GIHA.
Yeah, it is GEHA, Government Employees Health Association. Did I get it
Uh-huh.
right? There
Uh-huh.
it is. Yeah. So Ann, I got a story for you and a story for the listeners too, and viewers. I used to do these. What were they called? Um, employee recognition days Department of Treasury had in LA, and also health fairs. They had both with the Department of Treasury. So it was
Mhm.
Employee Recognition Day and health fair days. And they asked me to come in on multiple years to set up a booth and explain TSP and various benefits, federal benefits, pension calculations. Mostly they wanted me to just, let them know that I was there as a resource, especially for their TSPs. But I was with all the healthcare providers. So they all had tables around me, and I got to talking to everybody as I do. And I remember there was all kinds of swag for the uh, BCBS, is that what they call it? Blue Cross
Mm.
Blue Shield. And the guy, now this was years ago, and this is probably 12 years ago. But the rep from Giha, he had no swag. He might have had one banner like I have behind me and just a blank table. And I started talking to him. I said, hey, how come everybody's got BCBS? He goes, what's name brand? And I said, well, what about you guys? He goes, no, we're quite reputable. He said, we've got a lot of the same healthcare providers and doctors are in our plan that are in BCBS. They have a name brand and we don't. I go, well, why would I go with you then? He goes, you might want to compare the prices. He said, it might be a real eye opener. So you might, right? You might want to do that during open season if you're looking for cost, right? Or even coverage. Uh, and when somebody's thinking about changing their healthcare provider and they see the cost is a lot less, and let's say they use their plan quite a bit, um, what steps can they take to make sure that their coverage is gonna do what it was before, or at least hopefully do what it was before?
Well, there are a couple of good comparison tools out there that will, without you having to do a lot of research, give you a comparison side by side of what you pay for copays in and out of network, what you pay for specialists, what you pay for hospitalization. And here, let me just interject that when you're looking at a plan for hospitalization, you want a plan that pays a flat dollar amount, not a percentage, because those costs in the hospital can run fairly high. And if you're on the hook for even 20% of that, it could leave you with a much higher out of pocket than if you simply know what they're paying per day and the hospital has to accept that. So that's one key about what you could look at. The other thing OPM offers a comparison tool online if under their health insurance. They have a comparison tool where you can compare plans. It's a little clunky, if you will. It's about 17 columns in an Excel spreadsheet. But you could also go to a website called guidetohealthplans.org, and it's going to have a subscription fee. Your agency may pay for it, but it's about $16. And if you use a special code that we can give you guide 20, GUIDE, guide 20, you can take 20% off that. And
Is
their
that right?
comparisons are excellent, make it really easy for you to compare apples to apples.
Guide to healthplans.org.
Yes.
Okay, and that's for federal employees.
Yes, and they've loaded every single federal health plan, not just the national plans, every federal health plan across the country, over 250 outlines of coverage they've entered into their web-based system.
Huh. So 16 bucks for the year? Well, or for
And
open
really
season.
you're gonna use it 1 month,
Yeah,
right?
right, yeah, for open season. Well, that's nothing, and then Guide 20 will get me 20% off, so I'll save myself 3 bucks, $3.20. Well, if I know and I'm there and I'm paying, I might as well, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like a beneficial tool. Um, there's another plan that I have a story actually. He's well, he was. He passed away on us, but he was a civilian mariner, MSC, Military Sealift Command, and he told me that he had open heart surgery. They had to open him up, and then they opened his chest up, open heart surgery. He said he paid out of pocket absolutely this much, a big fat zero. I said, "Is that right, Mike?" His name's Mike. He says, "Yeah, that's right, Charles. I loved it." And guess what? It was, I want to say it was Mail Handlers Benefit Plan. Do they go? They made an acronym now, Ann, out of it. Is it MHBP? I'm pretty sure
Yes.
that's what it is. Yeah. And
Yep.
he said he absolutely loved that coverage. Now, I know you're listening and you're going, I'm not a postal employee, Charles. Why are you talking about MHBP? And the reason I am is because remember who he worked for. He was Civmar, civilian mariner. He was not a postal employee either. He was a civilian employee of the Department of Navy, but he had to pay, I think, 40 something dollars a year to be a member of that association. And through that, he had access to their health insurance. So it's also a plan that you might want to consider and examine.
And another example of that is APWU, which is the American Postal Workers. Those 2 plans are 2 of the 6 plans available to all federal employees across the country.
Is that right? So APWU, WU,
Yes.
huh, American Postal Workers Union, is it? How about that? And then MHBP. Okay, great. So there's choices there. Ah, I know what I was going to ask, Ann. If if I'm wanting to know if my specific doctor that I like, my specialist, will accept my coverage, I guess when I go in, I'll talk to my physician about that or my specialist. Is that right?
Well, if
Set you
you
up for
think
this one.
if you think your doctor has a clue how he gets paid, you would be wrong. That would
Poor
not be
thing.
accurate. He has people in billing for that. So you could simply call their billing department and say, I'm thinking about switching from Blue Cross Blue Shield to MHBP, and they can tell you if they accept that coverage.
Yes, okay, there it is. Yeah, you talk to the people that run the office, the ones up front. They'll know. They'll have the answers for you. There's no doubt about it. It reminds me of my mom. She was an RN, and she said, "Sweetheart, the nurses run those hospitals. The doctors don't do that. They come in and they do their thing, but the
Mhm.
nurses run the hospital." She used to tell me that all the time. And honestly, when your experience is exceptional medically, a lot of times it centers around the experience you had with the nurses. Yeah, it really does. But I digress a little bit. Oh, you might be concerned about the quality of say MHBP or GIHA or UPWA, APWU, sorry. Um, and from what I know, uh, the coverage is underwritten. See, they take it in blocks and they go with the power that they have in their coverage and they'll go to negotiate for you. the union or the MHPP or GIHA, and I believe right now MHPP, but GIHA is Aetna. So you correct me if I've got that wrong, Ann, but I believe it's Aetna, and that's no small provider of health insurance. You're not getting like any off-brand or podunk um, provider of health insurance. Right now, what I'm doing is going to my phone to check my facts, but I'm almost sure that's who it is.
I think you're accurate too. And
Yeah.
it really is, if we think about the consolidation of providers across the country, we're just getting big networks like Blue Cross Blue Shield has always had, but we're getting those kinds of network providers in Cigna, Aetna, are some other examples. And then the insurance companies agree to deal with that network.
Yeah, and so, what you have basically is strength in numbers. That's it. So they can go and they can negotiate on your behalf, and you have that privilege because simply you're a federal employee or a retiree. So congratulations to you. Okay, and, I think we've done a pretty good job of that, and, maybe take a look at your email inbox for those of you who are listening if it is open season time, because typically we're going to be doing a webinar, and I intend to have Ann back again. She can conduct that webinar, and it'll be live with questions and everything else. So, Ann, you heard me introduce this podcast, CD Financial, where health meets wealth. And we're talking about health insurance. How about that? So, why don't we? Because I'm always talking about the health tips that I like to do at the end. Because I listen, I want to do things that will keep me away from the doctor and away from using my health insurance coverage. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. I just want to stay healthy. So, could you give us one health tip that you've been able to put in practice in your life? So, I mean, you've stayed so energetic for so long and you're still pepping away. So, why don't you let us know one thing that you've done in your life that you think has really helped you health wise?
My favorite tip is a daily workout. And I know that may make some of you groan like, I don't want to have to do that every day. But I get up in the morning and I work out every day for 60 minutes. That's not to suggest that you have to
That's
choose
a
that
long
long of
time,
a time
man,
frame.
every day.
But I do, a lot of different, work kinds of workouts. I'm not doing the same thing every day. I ride the Peloton every day, but then I combine that with some other exercises. When I happen to be, in one of my favorite places on Maui, I usually end up walking about 5 miles a day on top of that. But if
Whoa.
we think about what one of the big things that can increase our longevity, it's our balance. It's simply not taking a fall and breaking a bone. And so through that exercise piece, hopefully my intention is to keep that good balance and not have any broken bones in my 90s.
Oh, wow. Well, and if you're walking, that's gonna and believe it or not, that cross patterning, the left and right, they even have machines for post-stroke victims that that mimic the crawling of left and right as a baby, and they retrain the neurological system and the brain. And so you walking or doing the Peloton, um, or swimming or bicycling or all those, even dancing, they say those those are cross pattern movements that actually
Mhm.
sort you out neurologically. I know way too much about this because my oldest son, of the 3 kids, he got hurt when he was a child and lost his speech, and through this, Institute for uh, oh, goodness sakes, Ann, how could I even forget the name? Institute for the Achievement of Human Potential, IAHP. It's a mouthful. In Philadelphia, they taught us this regiment, and we put it into practice for like 2 years, and it was every day, and it was an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes with both of the boys, and yeah. Anyway, it sorted Isaac out quite a bit, and by the time we were done, he was 8. We've been here on the West Coast for 16 years. He was 8 and Jude was 6. Do you know those little boys were running 3 miles a day with me? That was wild. We lived across from a DuPont estate, Bellevue Park in Wilmington, the Philly Metroplex. It was a beautiful we would walk, we would get warmed up, we would walk to the past the, well, it was equestrian. The DuPonts had tennis courts and they had stables. There was a stable there and there was multiple tennis courts. But it was from the turn of the century or so. And it had this huge 1.25 mile dirt track that went around a pond, and the woods were all surrounding it. It was a beautiful setting to, I mean, we couldn't have lived in a better spot to run every day for 3 miles. I'll tell you what, those boys were tough back then, especially. They were little boys. You wouldn't think you could do that, but it really helped my son to sort things out. So
I
I
I
get what
believe
you're
you.
saying. Balance, right? In your as you progress in your age, that's really going to keep you in shape if you keep on walking. You don't even have to run. I just run a little bit for 50 yards, maybe twice every morning, uphill where there's no impact when I take a walk. And it's only 15 to 20 minutes. And usually I'll do a set of pull ups and at the end, maybe a set of push ups. Yeah. And just that and drinking a couple glasses of lemon water in the morning. I'm oversimplifying, but now I'm stepping on your health tip. Daily workouts. Love it. Love it, Ann. Thank you. Okay. That's a wrap for this session of open season. Don't forget, it's the second Monday in November to the second Monday in December. Did I nail it, Ann?
You got it.
Okay, great. CD Financial, where health meets wealth. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this broadcast, share it with your family, friends, and coworkers, and subscribe. Just click the button there. Okay, we'll see you next time. CD Financial, where health meets wealth.